Hi guys, this is going to be on Monday, April 20th. And so I just wanted to say welcome back. Hope you had a great weekend. I will be adding today the grade for the TP cast notes. And we did have a little session on Friday. So if you missed it, you can send me questions or post a comment and I can try to help you with the poem. But it is going to be the TP cast notes were over the poem My Father's Love Letters, which was a little bit of a complex text, but I have not added those grades yet. And I hope to get those assignments graded Monday and Tuesday. There are not going to be any graded assignments on Monday and Tuesday of this week. We're just going to be finishing our novel. So today we're going to do 2 vignettes. They both seem relatively short, but there's a lot of significance in them. So I have about almost 2 pages of notes that are attached here. We're going to finish the novel tomorrow, if you can believe it. And the last few chapters are super short. I think there's maybe 3 or 4 vignettes, but we're going to get through all of them. Most of them are only a couple paragraphs long. And so tomorrow will be our last day discussing the last chapters. So today and tomorrow, you'll be posting again just a comment about the assigned vignettes to get attendance for Monday and Tuesday. There will be a vocab quiz over those 10 ACT words. I'll remind you to review that maybe tomorrow. And the quiz will be multiple choice and it will be on Wednesday. I'm going to have a graded quiz over pretty much the whole novel of House on Mango Street on Thursday as another quiz grade this week. And so you might want to be reviewing or making sure you've actually read the whole book. There will be a writing prompt, but I'm not going to get to it till next week. So you will still be using your book for another week for text evidence. And then the end of this week, we'll be doing a couple lessons on Wednesday and Thursday over finding shifts in a text and probably tying that back to the poem from last week, which had a question on the TPcast form about shifts and also sentence combining, which is kind of a writing grammar-based skill. And then next week, we'll probably start the week on Mondays, changing units for our last 4 weeks of school starting next week. We have 5 weeks, including this week. But after we finish this week with Mango Street, you'll have only 4 weeks left of school. And we'll be doing some activities on sci-fi and getting into some short sci-fi stories, a couple of teleplays from the Twilight Zone and other short dramatic episodes, a short film called 2081, and doing some things like that. And then we'll be done before you know it. So try to hang in there with me. Today, we are going to cover pages 101 to, I think, 104. So if you want to turn in your book, we're going to be starting with our very last chapter about Sally, which is Linoleum Roses. Now, linoleum was mentioned earlier in the book. I didn't put this in the notes that are in front of you, but if you remember back to the Family of Little Feet, back on, let me see if I can find the page. Sorry, I should have marked it. Family of Little Feet was on page 43. When the mother who owned the shoes that she was giving to the girls came down outside the steps on page 44, I'm sorry, that was the wrong page. Family of Little Feet, page 39. Sorry. So on page 40, it says the mother's feet, plump and polite, descended like white pigeons from the sea of pillow across the linoleum roses, down the wood stairs, over the chalk hopscotch squares, 5, 6, 7 blue sky. And that was at the top of page 40 in the Family of Little Feet. That description simply was describing only the view of the mother's feet walking across the floor, down the steps, over the chalk hopscotch, outside, blue sky above, and handing the sack of shoes to the girls outdoors. But it was told through a very unusual perspective of just following her feet from inside the house to outside. Now, linoleum, if you're not sure what it is, because our title, Linoleum Roses, was already on page 40 of the across the linoleum roses, down the wooden stairs, it would make sense it would be something on the ground. And linoleum is a plastic vinyl floor covering. And it used to be very popular in homes from this time period, like the 1960s and 1970s. And it was like a plastic sheet that had stamped designs on it. Sometimes it would look like fake bricks, or sometimes it would look like squares or have flowers on it, in this case, roses. And it would just be glued down. And it would be often used in kitchens or bathrooms, whereas today most of the homes have been updated to use tile. So linoleum was a floor covering, and in this case, the chapter is about Sally, and it's about a new place where she lives that apparently has linoleum on the floor with the patterns of roses printed on it, which must have been a popular pattern from the time, as it was already on page 40 mentioned in the Family of Little Feet. So this is the very last vignette where Sally is mentioned. So it's going to be important as we end the chapter and read really quickly to find out where we leave her. The last chapter we talked about last week on Wednesday together was, again, the Red Clowns chapter, where we talked about how Sally was mentioned by Esperanza, but she wasn't actually talking back. She was gone, and she'd left with a boy at the fair or the carnival, and Esperanza had been attacked. Now, we don't know how many months or weeks took place. I would say probably several months between the last vignette and this one. We never hear any more about Esperanza's attack, so we don't know if it was reported to the police, but that would be very doubtful. Linoleum Roses takes place sometime later after the carnival, where Sally has had the chance to form a new relationship with a new man. So there has to be enough time that that would have happened. So this seems like it's a little bit later than maybe like the next week, because now this is what happens to Sally as her final chapter and her final appearance in the book. So follow along on page 101 if you want to with us as we read Linoleum Roses. Sally got married, like we knew she would, young and not ready, but married just the same. She met a marshmallow salesman at a school bazaar, and she married him in another state where it's legal to get married before 8th grade. She has her husband in her house now, her pillowcases and her plates. She says she's in love, but I think she did this to escape. Sally says she likes being married because now she gets to buy her own things when her husband gives her money. She is happy, except sometimes her husband gets angry, and once he broke the door where his foot went through, though most days he's okay. Well, except he won't let her talk on the phone, and he doesn't let her look out the window, and he doesn't like her friends, so nobody gets to visit unless he's working. She sits at home because she is afraid to go outside without his permission. She looks at all the things they own, the towels and the toaster, the alarm clock and the drapes. She likes looking at the walls and how neatly their corners meet, the linoleum roses on the floor, the ceiling smooth as wedding cake. And there we leave Sally as a married teenager. Now, again, I think that when we go back to this first opening sentence, Sally, it says, got married like we knew she would. I think that's really important. And I put that again in the notes because when she states, as we knew she would, it seems like this is really not a big surprise. And so maybe if we were having this discussion live, I would ask you, are you shocked by this? Why or why not? Maybe you would say, no, I don't think this is very surprising, because most of you would probably figure out that Sally was trying to escape her home life. We already knew she's in a home that's abusive and was abused by her father. In her mind, because she doesn't have the age to live independently or the education, she's still a young teenager. And I really don't know how old she is. It says she is, again, before, barely older than Esperanza, and it said she went to a state to get married where it's legal to get married before 8th grade. So maybe she's like 14, which seems crazy. But again, this would have to be most likely done with parental permission. So she is married and she's like an 8th grader, and obviously she can't live on her own. So again, having a husband is her way to escape her father. And in her mind, because she's still a child herself, this probably sounded like a really good idea. This man promised her maybe money. It seems like her socioeconomic level is slightly better than what living in her family's house was. It seems like he bought her some material items, towels, toasters, alarm clocks, drapes, the beautiful corners where the walls meet, the ceiling smooth as wedding cake. It seemed relatively clean and like it was freshly decorated. So maybe the appearance of it looks beautiful, but the reality is it is abusive. So we have that same similar thematic idea that we've had in other chapters, that appearance is not reality. The appearance is that she's married to this guy who has money and he's stable, but the reality is he is abusing her just like her father. So again, some questionable things we can already tell about the abuse and the type of man this new husband is that he's described as a marshmallow salesman. Now, I think most of us would think that's the strangest job you've ever heard of. You could be a vendor for a company that makes marshmallows and makes other products as well, but nobody just goes around selling marshmallows by themselves. It doesn't seem like a legitimate job. Then think back, we also had Earl of Tennessee. He was described as a jukebox repairman, and he didn't repair jukeboxes either. So I think that this is sort of a ruse or a fake job he might have been telling her. And I think there's some symbolism in it because marshmallows are white. So it could be irony that he's supposed to look like he's innocent or good or trustworthy because he says he sells marshmallows, which are also sweet. So we have this idea of sweetness and candy, and it's white and good. Kind of also children are the ones that eat marshmallows. So maybe it seems like he's somehow preying on the children, and maybe he's a predator. So you get all this symbolism in the idea that he's a marshmallow salesman, but we don't really know what his real job is. Maybe he's a drug dealer. We don't know. But I don't think he actually sells marshmallows. So we do have this irony that he seems like he's supposed to be a white color or innocent and sweet, but actually he seems very abusive. We get some references to the abuse that, again, he says things that he once broke the door with his foot. He seems very controlling, which also reminds me of Minerva's husband as well as Rafaela's husband, who locked her in the apartment. He won't let her talk on the phone. He doesn't let her look out the window. He doesn't like her friends. She's afraid to go outside. And that again also sounds eerily similar to Rafaela. So what we understand here is that her husband appears to be much older. We don't really know what age he is, but he met her at school, which is also creepy because she was a student maybe in 7th grade, and this adult bizarre salesman comes to the school and then all of a sudden falls in love with a student, which seems like that would be illegal. So again, he seems very much to have the same predatory nature on children like the bum man or the Oriental man with the nice eyes from The First Job, who actually tricked her into giving him a kiss. And here we meet a man who actually did trick and seduce a young teen girl all the way to the point that she married him. So the irony is that Sally left her father because he was abusive, only to jump into a marriage where she's still abused. And it's even tragically worse because if she were staying with her father, she would have had more chances to leave at the age of 18 and be an independent adult. But because she's now saddled to this marriage when she's 14 or 15, there is the likelihood she'll end up as a teen mom and then have even more burdens with caring for children and be more impoverished and be more tied to him for the rest of her life, whereas she wouldn't have had that rest of her life connection to her father. So she's putting herself in an even more difficult and precarious position by being abused by a spouse over the abuse of a dad. Because in this case, the only way out is to escape through a divorce, which in some cases, if she later ends up with children, will be much more complicated. Again, we see that all the traits show that he is controlling and abusive in subtle ways. The only actual violence, it says, is actually breaking the door. It doesn't say she's black and blue the way she was with her father, but I think we can all make that prediction that that's just going to be coming next. And this is all just the early honeymoon stage where he's supposed to be in love and they're newly married, and these things are already happening. There is a lot of symbolism in the fact that she can't even look out the window, and that should remind you of looking back to the other women in the book who have all looked out their window, including Rafaela leaning out the window. And we had great-grandmother Esperanza resting her sadness on her elbow, looking out the window her whole life. And then Esperanza saying she didn't want to do that. We've said throughout the book that the whole idea of the window is like that portal where one woman on one side can look through and see freedom and all these things over here. They just can't get to them. The thing that's so sad about Sally is that she's not even allowed to go to the window. Great-grandmother Esperanza, Rafaela, they were all able to talk to people out of the window, look out of the window. Rafaela threw things down the window. At least they could see out. Rafaela had enough freedom to talk to the girls through the window down to Rachel and to Esperanza and throw them money to buy her the juice. But here, this man will not even let Sally get to the window, which even seems like a more subtle form of control. He doesn't even let her see what she can't have, much less look out, because maybe that would be longing for something that he knows she would leave him for. So we do see Sally, because it uses the word fear in the last paragraph. She sits at home because she is afraid to go outside without his permission. Real love will never make you afraid. And that's the opposite of what love is. So if you ever are in a relationship where someone makes you feel fearful for any reason, it's not love. Even if they say they love you, it is not love. So Sally is kind of trapped here. We have another example of failed flight, obviously. She tried to flee her father's house. She tried to get to freedom, but all she ended up doing was trading one prison for another. So she has these material possessions, which seems sort of ironic that maybe her life is supposed to be better now because she's not as poor. But the irony is that he never gives her her own money. She has to, it says she can buy her own things when her husband gives her money. So he controls everything in her economic life. He controls money, if she has friends, if she can talk on the phone. She has absolutely no freedom. She actually had more freedom in her father's house because she got to leave and see her friends. She has no friends now. He doesn't let her friends come over unless he's not there. So even though her father hit her, she still actually had more freedom than she does now. So this is, again, an example of failed flight. She did get to leave Mango Street. We assume she's living somewhere else. But the irony is she traded one prison for another, and she is not free. And this is where we leave Sally in this sort of loveless, very sad marriage where she's trying to convince herself how much she loves this new home. But the reality is, I think soon she'll realize that she's even in a worse situation than she was before. So she's a very tragic character. Now, the very last vignette we're going to read today is called The Three Sisters, page 103 to 104. And we kind of have a gap in time, I think, between these two vignettes also. And what I think you'll be excited to find out is Rachel and Lucy are back. Now, there's not a lot of talk with them, although this whole event happens at their house. And as you remember earlier, we had the idea that Rachel and Lucy sort of got pushed to the side and got kind of dropped as a friend, while Esperanza decided that Sally was just her cool new BFF, and she spent all her time with Sally over multiple chapters recently. And I think that through the whole incident with Red Clown, she really began to realize that Sally was not a loyal friend to her either, and was continually bailing on her and mocking her and laughing at her. And they really maybe needed to go their separate ways, and she wasn't really a good influence. Luckily, we don't really know how this happened, but it seems like Rachel and Lucy are willing and gladly to take her back as a friend, and now they're back together again. They're only going to be in a couple of vignettes, but I think it is a transformative thing to see that she's left Sally, although she still knows where she is, and she's back maybe where people are really her true, authentic friends with Rachel and Lucy. Now, what the plot of this is that unfortunately, Rachel and Lucy's mother has just had a stillbirth, and she's lost a baby sister either through stillbirth or maybe an infant death. And so this very, very tiny baby has died, and they're having what's called a wake, which is like a Catholic service in their home where people come and see the casket and they pay their condolences to the family. So even though we haven't seen them in a while, again, we have this idea that the infant sibling has died, and these three elderly sisters who are mentioned in the title, the three sisters, are actually relatives of Rachel and Lucy who come to this religious event to pay their condolences to Rachel and Lucy's family upon the death of this baby. And Esperanza is apparently there to come see Rachel and Lucy, and these three sisters come and talk to her, and she's never met them before. Now, one of the thematic ideas in this chapter is superstition. And we've had that before with such vignettes as Born Bad, where she felt that she was cursed and was going to go to hell because she mocked Aunt Lupe on the day that she died, and she felt it was bad luck to be born on the Chinese Year of the Horse. And an Elenita card, Palms Water, if you remember that one, where Elenita was like a psychic who lived on Mango Street. And again, she looked at a water for bubbles, and she also looked at tarot cards to be able to try to predict Esperanza's future, but all she said was, "You'll have a home in the heart," which Esperanza didn't understand for the $5 she paid her. So in this chapter, we have our last instance of superstition, and we have a reference to these three sisters being somehow kind of psychic, and they almost predict Esperanza's future. They ask to see her hands, which we know, if you think of palm readings, is sometimes done at fairs or carnivals, or sometimes done with psychics. And so it seems like they want to read her palms, which often is seen as the lines on your hands, since they're all individual, have sometimes superstitious beliefs that they predict something about you. So what happens is she gets into the home where the casket is described on page 104. So we're going to read the vignette first and then come back and talk a little bit more about the plot, about what they say on page 104 when they start reading her palm. So follow along with the three sisters, page 103. They came with the wind that blows in August, thin as a spider web and barely noticed, three who did not seem to be related to anything but the moon, one with laughter like tin, one with eyes of a cat, and one with hands like porcelain. The aunts, the three sisters, lost comrades, they said. The baby died, Lucy and Rachel's sister. One night a dog cried, the next day a yellow bird flew in through an open window. Before the week was over, the baby's fever was worse. Then Jesus came and took the baby with him far away. Well, that's what their mother said. Then the visitors came, in and out of the little house. It was hard to keep the floors clean. Anybody who had ever wondered what color the walls were came to look at that tiny thumb of a human in a box like candy. I had never seen the dead before, not for real, not in someone's living room with people to kiss and bless themselves and light a candle for, not in a house. It seemed strange. They must have known, the sisters. They had the power and could sense what was what. They said, "Come here," and gave me a stick of gum. They smelled like Kleenex or the inside of a satin handbag, and then I didn't feel afraid. "What's your name?" the cat-eyed one asked. "Esperanza," I said. "Esperanza," the old blue-veined one repeated in a high voice. Esperanza, a good name. "My knees hurt," the one with the funny laugh complained. "Tomorrow it will rain." "Ah, yes, tomorrow," they said. "How do you know?" I asked. "We know." "Look at her hands," Cat-Eye said, and then they turned them over and over as if they were looking for something. "She's special." "Oh, yes, she'll go far." "Yes, yes, Make a wish." "A wish?" Yes, make a wish. What do you want? Anything? I said. Well, why not? I closed my eyes. Did you wish already? Yes, I said. Well, that's all there is to it. It'll come true. How do you know? I asked. We know. We know. Esperanza, the one with marble hands, called me aside. Esperanza. She held my face with her blue-veined hands and looked at me. A long silence. When you leave, you must remember to always come back, she said. What? When you leave, you must remember to come back for the others. A circle? Understand? You will always be Esperanza. You will always be Mango Street. You can't erase what you know. You can't forget who you are. Then I didn't know what to say. It was as if she could read my mind, as if she knew what I had wished for, and I felt ashamed for having made such a selfish wish. You must remember to come back. For the ones who cannot leave as easily as you will remember. She asked as if she were telling me. Yes, yes, I said, a little confused. Good, she said, rubbing my hands. Good, that's all, you can go. I got up to join Lucy and Rachel, who were already outside waiting by the door, wondering what I was doing talking to three old ladies who smelled like cinnamon. I didn't understand everything they had told me. I turned around and they smiled and waved in their smoky way, and then I didn't see them again, not once or twice or ever again. Okay, so as we already set this up before I started reading, they were at the wake for the baby. On page 104, the aunt kind of calls them over. And again, they look at her hands and they appear to know she's going to go very far and she's very special. And they ask her to make a wish, which we never actually hear her wish, but she makes it silently. And I think most of you would probably guess that she said she wants a house or a dream house away from Mango Street, or a real house, or she wants to get away from where she lives currently. She never says exactly what it is, but it seems like they know her wish because they know she wished to leave, because they say, when you leave, you have to come back. And so she really believes that they could read her mind and that she had just wished to leave Mango Street. So the interesting thing is this kind of reminds me of Bums in the Attic, which we talked about last week, where she actually wanted a really nice house somewhere, and then she wanted to use it to be able to help people. And she said back in Bums in the Attic, as one of the things that she really wanted to do, that we said was kind of a suggestion she was more mature, this is on page 87, is that one day I will own my own house, but I won't forget who I am or where I come from. And that was on page 87. Here, these three sisters are saying, when you leave, you must remember to come back for the others. You will always be Mango Street. You can't erase what you know. You can't forget who you are. That's very similar to what she realized for herself about the Bums in the Attic and wanting to help the less fortunate. These three sisters are kind of recognizing that same thing. Esperanza is smart. She's brilliant. She'll have opportunities that other people don't have, because they mention, again, you must come back for the ones that cannot leave as easily as you. And so because of this kind of fortune or psychic, prediction that she's hearing, we do get the impression that she will leave. They don't say if you leave, they say when you leave, which implies that it is going to happen at some point, but most likely not until she graduates from high school. And they also say you can't forget who you are, which implies that even the Red Clowns chapter, even the assault on her, even betrayal by friends, even the impoverished life that she lives, are all going to shape who she is. Even the bad things that all of us go through, whether your parents have gotten divorced, whether you have a health condition, whether you have a sibling with special needs, whether your parent has lost a job, whether your parents are fighting, whether you have a parent with an addiction, whether or not you have step parents, you have to kind of blend those families, whether or not you struggle in school or certain subjects academically, or whether you deal with a learning disability. All of those things that sometimes we think are these big struggles that we have, because no one understands how hard it is to live with my dad. No one understands how hard it was to go through the divorce or to move every other year with my dad's job. Those are all things that make you who you are, even the struggles. And so that's something that our author is trying to remind us, that even though Esperanza doesn't want all those bad things, those things in life do happen. We can't control always the circumstances in which we find ourselves. We can only control how we respond to them. And so her goal is to take all those things, those hard things, the abuse, all of those challenges, and make them be a way to help other people, make them become something she ends up embracing, because the lessons she learned by going through those things made her who she is. And that's a huge lesson in maturity for Esperanza, but also for all of us, that as we face challenges, we embrace them, work through them. Sometimes we struggle with them. Sometimes they are not our fault. They're things other people do to us. But how we respond to them will shape your character, and it will determine the kind of person you are. And so the sisters have some really good advice and wisdom. And the last thing they say is that you will leave. But again, she has this advantage that she can get out whereas other ones cannot leave as easily as you. You will remember. And she says, yes, a little confused. So she still doesn't understand really what this means for her life, but she's a little bit more sure than she was when Elenita said a heart in the home. If you think of Minerva or Rafaela or even Sally or Alicia, these are the people who cannot get out as easily as her. They are maybe not as smart. They may not have as good as scholarship options. Many of them choose marriage and relationships, maybe toxic relationships, bad marriages like Sally or Rafaela, or they have children like Minerva, which burdens them with big obstacles that make it so much harder to get out, because then you're taking care of other people and you can't just leave and flee for yourself when you have children. So we get the impression that Esperanza will possibly be that kind of character who does want to care for, people who are more disadvantaged than her, that her goal should maybe not to just get a white colored dream house with no fence and lots of bathrooms, but maybe she's meant for more than that. Maybe she's supposed to change people's lives by going away, getting an education, having a good job, and then coming back and transforming Mango Street. Maybe she develops a better school there. Maybe she comes back and lives in the neighborhood. Maybe she donates money. Maybe she tutors. Maybe she builds a community center. Maybe she offers scholarships to underprivileged kids to help them get out the way she could, but that she can do something. So the last thing I want to leave you with is kind of some symbolism, because the three sisters are an illusion. An illusion, remember, Allusion, is a reference to another literary work. And these three sisters, just the idea that they tell the future and that there's three of them, are an allusion to Greek mythology, to the three fates, which are three goddesses who can also tell the future. So these three sisters are supposed to be a parallel to the Greek mythological three fates. And in this chapter, she has this chance encounter where she's told, you will leave, but you have a responsibility once you do. So that is the end of this chapter for today. We'll finish the book tomorrow. So all you really have to do today is please post at the bottom of the comments on today's dated area. So you can make a comment about one of these two vignettes or ask a question or comment on somebody else's. Please do a little bit better than just saying, I agree with Bob. I've gotten a few people just making those types of comments. I will give you credit for attendance because I know you were there, but that's not really a really helpful or insightful comment that's really going to further the discussion. So really try to jump on and maybe add on to someone else's idea rather than just saying, yes, I agree, and make it a little bit more thorough. And then you are going to also have these notes attached if you want to review them, and then watch this video. And that's all that you're going to have to do for Monday. And then on Tuesday, we're going to finish the book. So if you have any more questions with the TPCast assignment that was supposed to be turned in on Friday, or hopefully by the weekend, I will be grading it today on Monday the 20th. And feel free to reach out to me if you need some help. Make sure you like and subscribe. Talk to you later. Bye.